This is the albums of March video, so I haven't necessarily had as much time to go through this. There's been a lot of stuff I didn't even get time to talk about here, and I don't know if I will be able to talk about them in general, but we'll have to see. But yeah, this might be a bit short, but yep, that's all I got to say. Let's dive in. We'll start with the worst, then do the alright, and then do the best. The new Sick Puppies album I do not like. Wave the Ball. The biggest issue I have with this is, well, it's got a new vocalist, which isn't the bad part. I don't think having a new vocalist necessarily can ruin it, but the writing that's followed on has not been that intricate, especially since it's been almost 9 years since the last album, and even the last few albums from Sick Puppies hasn't really been that good. Wave the Ball just kind of solidifies the fact that I think this band is a long lost cause, and their best material is way past due at this point. But yeah, this is definitely not a fun album. I think There Goes the Neighborhood maybe had some of that energy and charm I liked about it, but once you've kind of closed that song up with its weird gimmicks and then you go into the rest of this, it feels like a very experimental, less political version of a lot of bands that have been trending lately, like Fever 333, especially with the capitalization of the songs as well. This just comes off as very radio friendly and just generic. A lot of songs will play with a bit more electronic components, and then some other songs will give you this more hard rock sound that just sounds very generic. Sick Puppies had some hits back in the day, and that's kind of all I really think of at this point. I don't really think there's many people that would go out of their way to listen to this, and I'm not surprised, to be honest. This is a pretty weak album. I'm going to have to give it a 2 out of 5. I did not like this one. The new debut album by chaos.sequence, Project CHIMERA, is a similar take to the industrial deathcore sound that we had from the Browning and other bands that have been following through with elements like that. Although I feel like this one lies less on deathcore, more of a metalcore blend, you still get it regardless. I can't really say I'm big on this one. I find the writing to be very samey, as we've heard from the Browning do this sound. A lot of the ideas here just kind of don't really work with the muddled, fuzzled production from this. There's loads of points where vocals just sound hard to hear, and I don't think they necessarily are anything original or anything that just compels me whatsoever. I find the writing just to kind of be pretty weak with this one. Project CHIMERA has a decent premise, but the execution of this album I don't think really helps it, to be honest. I was kind of disappointed because I love these sort of sounds, but this one just kind of felt underwhelming in my opinion, so I have to give it a 2 out of 5. It's just not that good. Yeah, honestly, I'm not liking the new one by cleopatrick, Fake Moon. Cleopatrick's had some fun energy bops, especially with the first album, Bummer, having some songs that generally you could feel like you can hear in a mosh, but you cannot mosh to anything from this. This is an album that, instead of just going for that more alternative indie hard rock sound, they just went for a lo-fi indie pop direction, which isn't the worst idea if you can make it work, but with how every single song just muddles together to feel like the same aesthetic, there isn't really anything worth going into this record if you're looking for Cleopatrick's classic sound. This is a huge change, and I think this is one that's absolutely for the worst. Yeah, not a good album in my opinion. I'll give it a 2 out of 5. Bit disappointed. We've got a brand new album by Arch Enemy, The Blood Dynasty, and to be fair, with Arch Enemy, it's kind of been hard to get into their sort of sound of melodic death metal. I think they've got some decent ideas, and they've had some pretty good riffs in the past, but it's never really been my go-to band if I ever wants to go into the genre. I can definitely think of a few I'd much more rather dabble in, but Arch Enemy, I think, is kind of the... It's kind of like a pizza at the end of the day. You'll still eat it even if it's not that good, and you probably might have it again, and I kind of think this is what Blood Dynasty is. You got some decent riffs, you got a lot of guitar solos which kind of feel a bit weird, and some of them just don't really click in the best way, but there's still some good effort put into this record, and I think it does do some melodic death metal magic here and there, but for the most part I think Arch Enemy is just kind of trying to really push itself onwards with the same sort of writing we've had. We've had some band members come and go with this at this point, but I think it's just kind of more or less the writing is repeating itself and some ideas just kind of fin and blend into that, because I feel like if you put this between their last few albums, it kind of probably become this weird hybrid, just blending in all the sounds it has. Blood Dynasty has some decent moments and some decent riffs and some decent ideas, but for a whole concept of the record, I can't really dabble with it necessarily. I think it's just okay, to be honest, so yeah, it's an alright album, I suppose. The new album by Raging Speedhorn is kind of underwhelming. So this is Nightwolf, the newest entry in their sound, and with a band that plays with a lot of extreme metal to sludge metal, stoner metal sounds, this album kind of takes the tame aspect to it. It kind of feels like a softer replica of the structuring of something like Chat Pile, but it comes off with more of Raging Speedhorn's initial sound. A band that's been going since the 90s and has quite an established variety in their discography. Nightwolf, as well as its terrible album art, which is pretty shit to look at, the album also just generally feels like it's going for some of the weaker writing we've had from the band. Not necessarily terrible, and it is like definitely not an offensively bad album, and I wouldn't even say it's that bad, to be honest. I think that's why it's in this category, but from Raging Speedhorn standards, this is probably one of the weakest steps they've had. I generally think there's not really many songs that stood out to me on numerous listens, and I just found it just to kind of, as it goes through, while you do have the more heavier sounding stuff, you kind of go more into the stoner, sludgy aesthetic as you dive deeper. I find the songs just to kind of work less in that structure, and I kind of wish we saw more stuff like Buzzkiller and Blood Red Sky. But other than that, it's an alright album. I just think there's a few things that hold it back. I think the energy on the new Young Widow's Power Sucker album is good. It's the first album the band's done in over a decade, but for this noise rock trio, I don't think it quite holds up as well as some of the earlier stuff without kind of resembling too much of what made that work. You still get some pretty impressive moments instrumentally, but I think for a consistent listen, it's not going to quite appeal as much in terms of just going all out with this experimentation. I think it just kind of stagnates into a lot of songs meshing together to kind of have this sound, and I don't think the overall mixing on this one is my personal favourite, but I think for a comeback, it definitely at least reels in with some of the songs. I'm not the biggest fan of what it's going for with Young Widows here, but Power Sucker's got some decent stuff, but I'm going to have to give it a alright rating, because I'm not really as keen as I want to be on this. We've got the new one by Cryptosis, Celestial Death. This is a pretty small, more obscure thrash metal band that plays with a lot of fun elements. This album goes for something more atmospheric, but it also feels like it paces itself quite well to bring in still that hard-hitting sound of double pedals, thrash in general, but I don't think this album goes anywhere in particular that absolutely reels me in. I think it's definitely a nice sound what they're going for here, and I like the aesthetic, and I think it has some pretty clean sound to it as well, but Celestial Death, I kind of just think this one's alright. I wish it grew on me more. I think the first bunch of songs you get doesn't quite reel me in necessarily. You get this slow start with the prologue Awakening, and then you're ripped into Faceless Matter, which feels like it should be this better of a track, but to me the proper genius of this record shines quite later on with tracks like Cryptosphere, which to me is my favourite. I think this one definitely has some of the most fun elements to the sound of this record, but yeah, it's decent, I suppose. I'll give it a 2.5 out of 5 to say it's just a alright record. I don't really see myself going into this one for a while, to be honest, but yeah. We got a brand new album by Courting, Lust for Life, or How to Thread the Needle and Come Out the Other Side to Tell the Story. I believe is their third record, and there has been some potential talk about this being their last album, which if so, it's quite underwhelming. Honestly, Courting's had some pretty good stuff. His Stealth Rollback is definitely the sort of material I'd love to see explored more on this record. And even tracks like Lust for Life as well does have some great moments. It's definitely got some good dance electronic tunes, but for what the album goes, I just think it's okay. It's not one that really gripped me in, and I honestly think I'd want some of the songs to be explored more, and I feel like it just feels more like an EP than an album. It's very short for that, but yeah, it's fine. We got the new one by the Doom Pop Dreamgaze band that pretty much dabbles with Doom and Shoegaze and Dream Pop. Is Psalm with their third record, Let the Light In. Yeah, this one's actually pretty nice in sound. I like the overall aesthetic. I think this is a sort of genre mash which has been done before, but I think Psalm's definitely kind of solidifying why it's definitely got some nice fresh elements to it that I think sounds good. Nothing crazy from the band. I think this definitely is some good stuff, but yeah, I wish it jumped out a little more than it did, but Let the Light In is still a pretty good record. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. I quite like this one. We've got the new one by Downpour, Where There Is Life, There Is Hope. This is a melodic hardcore outfit with some pretty nice elements to it. I would say that the riffs definitely see some great powerful emotion as well as the vocals, but yeah, with melodic hardcore, it's definitely something that I'm not the biggest fan of, but I think Downpour does a good job at their take on the genre. It's certainly not anything that tops bands like Casey or Bloom when they're incorporating it, but Downpour's still pretty good, so that's all I have to say. It's a 3 out of 5, definitely good variety. I think it gets better towards the end, as I think that's got some of the strongest material, but still a good album, definitely recommend it. The new album by The Horrors, Nightlife, is not too bad actually. I think for an album after 8 years, it does bring in some refreshing melodies, got some nice hooks. I like the structure in some of the songs. I think the highlight tracks are definitely the first few we get in, and I think as it goes on, it kind of fizzles into more or less the same idea, but the energy with tracks like Aerial already put me into a great start with the record. I just think it's not their best work, and I definitely know they can do a better job with more polish to it, but I mean, after 8 years, it still sounds pretty decent, and I think for what they're bringing here, some decent stuff, so not too bad. I'll give it a 3 out of 5, it's decent. So we got the new one by Imperial, Triumphant, Goldstar. This is from the blackened death metal jazz fusion band that does a lot of experimentation, which is incredible, honestly. The fact that we've got something heavy blending the jazz elements to something that doesn't actually feel very gimmicky, but it lets it flow into it quite nicely. Goldstar is a surprising album for someone who's never really dabbled into this band, and it's definitely given me good first impressions, and I can see this being definitely one of the highlight albums in their discography, from the Goldstar interlude, which definitely has this more gimmicky sample part, which just kind of comes off as a little advertisement product before you're into the track Rock Modern, which I just love the transition. It kind of goes from there. A lot of good stuff. You got some nice features on here as well, and I think your face will get melted off by Eye of Mars, which is just such an amazing opening track, and Industry of Misery is a great way to end it. This is just generally, in my opinion, how you do a very good experimental album, and it works great. I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5. I quite like it a lot. And that is every album of March 2025 reviewed that I got time to talk about and listen to. Yeah, honestly, it's been kind of a bit mixed. I think the best stuff is definitely the stuff I've done separate videos on, but outside than that, it's just kind of got some pretty deep good stuff like Imperial, Triumphant, and then we've had some generally weaker stuff like Cleopatrick, but that's all I really have to say, and yeah, thank you so much for watching, and see you next video.